Welcome back to the third installment of our 2021 RPA Webinar Series here at EnterBridge RPA. I'm Derek Struxma.
And I'm Khaleesi Trenadu.
And today we're going to be with a special guest of ours, Dane Thorson from Home Care Delivered. EnterBridge RPA has worked with Home Care Delivered for a number of years building RPA solutions. And he's graciously accepted to come on and answer some questions about RPA and kind of the whole process that they went through in establishing an RPA program at their organization. So once again, thanks, Dane. And if you could tell us a little bit, Dane, about just what Home Care Delivered is and what your role is there, that would be great to get us started.
My name is Dane Thorson, and I work at Home Care Delivered. We are a durable medical equipment supplier. We provide incontinence, continuous glucose monitoring supplies, wound care, ostomy, nutritional, things like that to customers' homes. We deliver them uh, um, to your doorstep, and we provide nationwide. We've been in business for over 20 years, and we started in our owner's parents' basement, and a we moved to a suite in an office park, and then now we have a whole floor in a multi-story office building. We have over 200 employees now. So we started from a handful, and we're up to a couple hundred, and we have offices in multiple states and nationwide, like I said. My role specifically is I am in project management, and so I handle everything um, from small quality of life and enhancement requests to major projects such as like right now we're implementing a new software internally, and so I'll manage and facilitate those at HCD.
Thanks, Dane, for that intro that helps us get to know you a little bit better. So how did you hear about RPA and how did you become interested in it?
So we actually learned of RPA through EnterBridge, and about 2 years ago, we met with EnterBridge to talk to them about another project. Um, and through that meeting, we learned of RPA, and immediately we could see the applications we can take to it and apply it internally. And we saw immediate value. We knew of I walking out of that, we knew what we wanted our pilot to be. Um, RPA for us supplements our existing internal automations. So we have a lot of automations, but we also have a lot of manual processes. And so RPA supplements the existing automations we have and allows us a different avenue to construct some automations specifically for external third-party things like portals and things like that. And how we use and leverage RPA at Home Care Delivered, it solves those time-consuming, repetitive, um, mind-numbing tasks that are really honestly a waste of a human's expertise and time. And a robot can do that in a fraction amount of time than a human can. And so that's how we use our bots today to um, do things, do the repetitive tasks that a human can do, but do them quicker, but also helps us keep clear of the backlogs that build up through our manual processes. And so at our company, since we're relatively small, like I said, a couple hundred employees, um, for some processes, we typically will only have one person assigned to it. And so if that person goes on, vacation or calls out sick or something like that, it's very likely that that work can build up for a day or two until that person comes back, and then they have to work double time to clear out the backlog. And so that's one of the great things about robots is they don't take vacation, they don't call in sick, they don't take breaks, don't take lunch breaks. They really work 24/7, weekends, holidays, and they're really reliable in that way. And so you never have to worry about a backlog building up from a RPA process. And then the last thing that we identified that would be RPA is great at, and specifically would be great for us, is the scalability. When our business grows, and we've grown throughout the years exponentially, we don't need to hire as many people do to account for the new business that we're getting. The processes are generally the same. It's just more volume going through those processes, right? So if we have a robot doing it, that robot can work faster, harder. We can even spin up multiple robots to do the same process and do it quicker that way. And then we don't have to hire 5 new people for this new influx of business. And one of the big reasons that kind of got us down RPA was um, there were some specific points in our history where we won major contracts and we had a large bulk influx of business. And so we've hired 30, 50 new people during that influx of business. And that's something we identified that RPA could really help out with is when stuff like that happens, we could spin up X number of bots to do a particular process that we would have needed to hire many more people in the past to do.
So, what are some of the use cases that you've seen at HCD?
So I'm going to talk about 3 of the use cases that we currently use at HCD. The first one, which was our pilot, is a process called prior authorizations. So when a customer gets an order, their insurance sometimes requires what's called a prior authorization. And you might experience this at doctor's offices and whatnot when you have surgeries or lab work or what have you done. Um, these prior authorizations are essentially the insurance approving us, the supplier, to send this customer that quantity of those supplies. And so they're approving the shipment and uh, they're not guaranteeing payment that they'll pay us, but they're essentially saying, yeah, that's covered. You can ship it and send us the claim for it. And so what this robot actually does is it takes data from our internal system and then it goes out to the insurance's portal to essentially fills out the request form on their portal and submits it. And so that process takes a human roughly 5 minutes, and it takes a robot less than 1 minute. And so those are some of the more, that PA process, prior authorization process, is one of the more time consuming manual processes we have. And so that's why we identified it immediately as our pilot. And that's how we're using it today. The second one I want to talk about is um, we have a robot that will transfer claims from one insurance to another. So when we send a shipment to a customer that has multiple insurances, we'll generate a claim and bill that claim to those insurances. The first claim will either pay or deny, and then when we get that response, we then send the balance of that claim to the next payer down the ladder. And so what this bot does in particular is it takes a list of claims that knows it needs to transfer it to the next payer, the next insurance. And what it does is it'll go in our internal system and it's essentially just clicking a bunch of buttons. It takes a person about a minute to do this, but it'll take the bot less than 10 seconds per each one. And so the difference there is noticeable, but it's not too huge, except it does hundreds of these claims. So add all that up, and that is a huge time savings for us. It saves our revenue cycle department multiple hours a day, and we saw the value of that one immediately. And the third one I wanted to talk about was it's very similar to the first bot, is taking a claim for a specific insurance. And in order to submit that claim to the insurance, they don't want it electronically. They want it entered on their portal. And so we have the bot take information from our internal system, and it data enters that onto the insurance's portal and submits the claim.
So, what is your process for identifying good use cases for automation?
The process we have at HCD to bring up RPA ideas and identify use cases, um, it kind of folds into our general enhancement request process. And so there's kind of two different ways it could come up. One, a stakeholder comes to me and proposes as an idea, hey, I have a great idea for a bot. I want to do this. Or number two is I'll actively sit down with department directors, and we'll go through their processes, and we'll identify pain points and areas where we could automate. And that's another area, another avenue I can find RPA ideas from. And so through these various entry points, I'll then evaluate that idea for RPA. Is it good to build a bot for, or do we want to handle it through different automation, maybe some internal automation? And after we determine it's eligible for RPA, then I figure out I work with the stakeholder to figure out what is the expected and estimated ROI. What's the value we expect to get out of this? And so we have a unofficial bar or floor that each one has to meet for it really to be determined, okay, is it even worth my time to go through the writing out the process and then bringing it up to EnterBridge, hey, we want to build this bot. And so if it meets that bar, then it goes down the line. And so at that point, then I'll work with the stakeholders. We'll really define the process. We come up with what we call a happy path, which is essentially if there are no issues, no exceptions, what's the narrow road a use case will go down this process. And then we'll branch off from that road. What are all those exceptions that we expect to encounter? And what's the start and the end points we want to have? And so we'll write that out, and that'll be the beginnings and the bones of a process definition document.
So how has automating some of these processes improved your business at HCD?
So RPA really frees our humans up to do the more complicated tasks that require their expertise and require their skill set. They're being underutilized if they're doing the repetitive tasks that require no skill other than clicking certain buttons that I can write down on a document and anyone can follow the steps. Um, we want to use their expertise to make decisions and judgment calls, not clicking a button over and over again. And another way this helps our business is it goes back to the scalability. It'll allow us to grow without needing to hire as many people and incur additional costs that way. So it pays for itself, really.
So, how quickly do you usually see an ROI with robotic process automation?
If we're just talking value, we see that right away. the very first time the bot runs, the first week, the first month, because we're able to reallocate a human onto some other process, we can see that value right away. In terms of recouping the costs, so the sunk costs of me spending time to develop the process, write it down, put it on paper, and then the cost for EnterBridge to develop the robot. We usually recoup those within the first year of the bot's lifetime. And so every year after that is just icing on the cake for us.
So Dane, we've been working with home care delivered for quite a while now, and I just was wondering if you could kind of explain how EnterBridge has been helpful during your RPA journey.
So quite honestly, without RPA or without EnterBridge, we wouldn't be where we are today. EnterBridge taught us, guided us through RPA. For me specifically, I was brand new to RPA. I knew nothing about it. It was a new concept, new idea, and so learning that from EnterBridge, they were very patient with me, asked a lot of questions, but they were great. They taught me it. They helped me through things like explaining the UiPath licenses. Those aren't self-explanatory, but it was good because as soon as I could wrap my head around what RPA is, how the UiPath stuff works, it clicked for me and it made a whole lot more sense, and I could become the RPA champion at my organization and promote it even more. Initially, HCD wanted to develop our own bots. We went into it saying, yeah, this is great. Let's use RPA, use EnterBridge, get us started, and then we'll take it from there and develop them on our own. But quite honestly, we've gotten away from that because EnterBridge makes it so easy and so convenient, and um, it, it is a great relationship to have with that we have with EnterBridge. And over these last 2 years, at this point, I want to give a shout out to one of EnterBridge's developers, Ryan Halbrook. I've worked with him for the 2 years now that we've been doing RPA, and he's one of the reasons that it's been so convenient and so easy. EnterBridge is competent at what they do. They do a good job. They're a pleasant partner to work with. I can't emphasize enough that it's great that somebody is good at what they do, but when you genuinely enjoy working with them and you look forward to the interactions and the next idea that comes up and solving problems with them, it's it makes a great relationship, and so I can really trust and rely on EnterBridge. And I do appreciate, not just that they taught me the RPA space and the journey and what it could do, but also they've been very patient and accommodating throughout the journey. And so they're really a great partner to work with.
Thanks for that, Dane. We really have appreciated working with you too. So how did you help others in your organization understand what RPA is and to buy into it?
So what we did at HCD when we launched our pilot bot, I actually gathered all the executives and department directors in a room, and we showcased a demo of that very first pilot bot. And so with everyone sitting there, we showed on the screen, hit the button, let the bot run, and they got to see everything. The bot would, jump through the screens, enter all the data. They got to see that less than 1 minute process right before their eyes. And so I feel like that was honestly probably the best way I could have introduced it to that group. They got to see it firsthand. They got to see how we applied it, one of our processes, applied a bot to that, and that allowed them to kind of think of things in their area. And the best example I can give is one of the attendees of that meeting was the director of our revenue cycle department, and she saw that, and you could see her eyes go, and it immediately clicked for her, and she was asking all kinds of questions during the meeting. And since then, she's actually been my biggest stakeholder and has the most amount of bots at her company for her department, because from that immediate demo there, she really bought in and realized she could apply this in her area and started coming up with ideas. And some of them were eligible and some of them weren't, but um, getting people to see that was important for our company. Sending them an email telling them, hey, we have RPA now, not good enough. You got to show them and let them see it in action.
So, Dane, what advice would you give other people who are thinking about implementing RPA in their organization?
So something I learned from the get-go and along the way was um, it is important you come up with an RPA team at your organization. And what I mean by that is it could be one or more people, but people that are really responsible for and champion RPA at your organization. They need to be involved in the construction of the robots too. So don't just write down requirements on a piece of paper and hand it over to EnterBridge. Be involved in that construction. Create those process definition documents yourself. That's really helped me. It gets me in the mindset of, okay, not just how does a human work, but how does a bot need to process this? And when you write it like that, you have a better idea and better chance of identifying as many exceptions that could occur throughout your process. The second thing that helped me personally was um, UiPath offers free trainings, and they have trainings for different roles of RPA, so like a business analyst, a programmer, things like that. And so I took those trainings for multiple roles, and not only for my role, but did it help me, but for other roles, it helped me realize where they come in, what they're responsible for, even though we may not necessarily use those roles on our end in our organization. It made me think of, okay, if I'm the only RPA person at my organization, what are some things that I need then? What are some other hats I also need to wear essentially? Um, and so that helped me understand RPA in general and the methodology behind it. Uh, a big suggestion I would have, the third point here, is come up with a simple process for your pilot. Don't do what we did. We identified something we really wanted, not necessarily the best thing for a pilot. Come up with a simple pilot that will validate RPA for you guys, but also um, just RPA in general. Something that's not going to break, that's simple and easy to build, that's quick, and you can turn around pretty easily and see, okay, do we want to move further with this, or is RPA not right for our business? And we kind of did it the backwards way. We found something that we really wanted, and it took, weeks, month to construct. And so in hindsight, I would have liked to proposed a better pilot so that we could turn around something in a week or something and evaluate it and go from there and then dive into the thing we really wanted. And lastly, the this might get overlooked as you're doing it, but it's very, very important. Um, come up with a list and a plan, a roadmap, if you will, of RPA ideas, and work with EnterBridge to develop that roadmap for 3, 6 months, a year, whatever. Don't have your initial set of ideas, work through them, and then there's some dry period. You want it to be a constant evolution and adding in RPA ideas in a regular structured fashion. And that's something that we encountered as well. We had 4 or 5 ideas lined up, and then there was a dry period. And so moving on in the future, what we are doing now is coming up with a roadmap, budgeting to that roadmap, and getting those ideas on paper and working with EnterBridge on the design and the roadmap of it, rather than throwing stuff over the wall. Hey, can you work on this? Hey, can you work on this? So come up with a plan. EnterBridge is very accommodating about that, and they're happy to work with you.
Thanks, Dane, for joining us today, and thank all of you for tuning in. Next month, check out our webinar for April, and for more information, visit our website at www.enterbridgerpa.com. Stay classy.